In July 2014, we embarked on an adventure that would remain with us for a lifetime. This adventure to cross one of the oldest continents in the world was much more than a big motorbike ride or some trip into the outback. It was about the search of finding true brotherhood and teamwork. It was about pushing the boundaries and the challenges that city life robs us of. In this film, I hope to take you on a journey as we follow the footsteps of Burke and Wills, crossing more than 7,000 kilometres through the heart of Australia. Watch as we ride together, laugh together, break down together, as we endeavour to see the same places as the explorers did in 1860. Welcome to the Burke and Wills Adventure of 2014. In July 2014, we embarked on an adventure that would remain with us for a lifetime. This adventure to cross one of the oldest continents in the world was much more than a big motorbike ride or some trip into the outback. It was about the search of finding true brotherhood and teamwork. It was about pushing the boundaries and the challenges that city life robs us of. In this film, I hope to take you on a journey as we follow the footsteps of Burke and Wills, crossing more than 7,000 kilometres through the heart of Australia. Watch as we ride together, laugh together, break down together, as we endeavour to see the same places as the explorers did in 1860. Welcome to the Burke and Wills Adventure of 2014. After a huge first day of supply runs all over Melbourne, we returned to assemble a modest field kitchen where Phil would take over the show and cook a fantastic meal for us. An army marches on its stomach, they say, so eating well during our adventure was paramount. Good food lifts morale, and this was certainly good food. Dave's health was worrying as it progressively got worse into the evening, when the cold was really starting to bite us all. Chris spent the entire day working on the assembly of the bikes and the final checks so they would be ready for the ride. I had been patting myself on the back for providing a group of healthy bikes for my riders, but Chris wasn't so enthusiastic about the mechanical condition of these ageing old army bikes. From fuel and oil leaks to brakes that simply weren't working, his work was cut out, requiring him to put 12-hour days into the reconditioning of these machines. And these are all issues that should have been addressed in the lead up to the ride.
Fork seals are a little weeping. Got a couple of transmission seals a bit weeping.
I tried to make light of the situation as I was confident the bikes would get us across the 4,700 kilometre journey before us. But again, like the trailer of doom, I was in for a rude shock.
Throttle cables or two of the throttle cables on the bikes are actually sticking, like this one here now. See that? It's like the cruise control sort of modification, really.
I like cruise control.
So you can hold it on and it will stay on. So it's pretty cool. This brake you can actually pull all the way. You can actually bottom the brake out, and we've bled it many times. And
Is that good?
I wouldn't say it's a great thing. The clutch, actually, you could liken it to your nails going down a cheese grater in operation. If you're looking for smooth, being slippery oil on a table, and nails going down a cheese grater, that's the sensation of getting operating this clutch. So the clutch cable actually is worn through on a bit of steel here, and it's rusted out inside. So that might be a bit of a problem later. But who really needs a clutch? We can get around that.
So apart from that, the bike's good.
A few minor issues with fuel as well. All the fuel lines are all deteriorated and falling off the bikes like here. So we had to put new fuel lines in, those. A couple of taps are weeping as well, so if you turn it on you can see it leaks around there. But we sort of moved it around a few times and that slowed up a little bit, so we're hoping that...
Chris, so what...
But apart from that, they're good.
Yeah, apart from that, they're pretty good.
And
the seats are very hard and stiff and... Right, so
it's good.
So
for your back.
One really good part is this addition here. They haven't done a lot of kilometres, the bikes, but they've got a lot of age been sitting around, and that's just as bad as doing a lot of kilometres. It must be in fact worse. There's a lot of seals that'll go on us for sure, but we've actually got holes right through the exhaust down there.
I put them there for heating. I thought that blowing hot air forward, we'd ride into the hot air, and this rider here is going to be warm. So, you know what, turn off the camera.
But they haven't done.
There you go, always the joke and taking nothing serious. I should have listened to Chris, but instead I was joking around.
Right, turn that off.
I don't know if there's much more we can do at this point. We've made a decision to go and pack up and leave. And there are going to be things that happen, and hopefully with the skills and the tools and spares we've got with us, we can sort it out as we go. If not, this trailer is going to get a workout again.
4 weeks before our departure, I'd ordered 6 powerful radio communications units for our helmets. After failing to arrive in Townsville, I hit the phone only to learn that the company that had received the payment had forgot to mail the units out. However, since that same company was located in Melbourne, I'd instructed them on the phone and by email that we would be collecting them 2 days prior from our departure out of Melbourne. Imagine my surprise when I was informed that the items had again mistakenly been mailed back to Townsville. This meant that I had to spend another $700 to buy a new set over the counter while the original set was being returned.
We, according to our brief last night, should have left 2 hours ago. Unfortunately, we've had a very, very big dilemma. Let me introduce you to the problem.
Communication equipment is by far the most important asset on an expedition like this. The ability to quickly let members of your party know what's going on can mean the difference between life and death. I knew, as my team knew, that once we hit the Simpson Desert, we'd be riding over massive sand dunes, where oncoming vehicles that might be driving on the wrong side of the track could wipe us out. Then there were road conditions that we'd need to communicate up and down the line. If animals were feeding on the side of the road or emus on the horizon, this is all important stuff that we'd need to know, and a reliable communications unit would allow us to ride safely. So, with everything finally here, we thought we had the problem sorted out, but we were in for a disturbing find.
So, we have a major situation. These don't network. Really, the way these 6-packs work is these two talk to each other, these two talk to each other, and these two talk to each other. But all 6 don't talk together. We can't get a party line or a conference going, which is the most important thing. And it's pointless for Sam and Chris to talk to each other when I might need to talk to them and get information about where we're going. So this was a problem. Chris over here is now working on a plan B. We're very lucky. He bought his own 4-com set. Unfortunately, it's only 4. So Dave won't be in the loop. However, we do have a UHF radio to be able to talk to Dave so we can pass information up and down the line. Dave will be talking to Chris, and Chris will talk to the rest of us. That's the dilemma that we're under. Anyway, we'll see how we go.
With the stress building with every minute the clock ticked towards our departure out of Melbourne, it would be Chris and Phil who would work overtime leaving their duties to now help mop up this terrible mess. Now, don't get me wrong, I've always known that we would have issues with equipment on such an adventure, but good planning stemming back from 2 years should have sorted most of these surprises out. However, I had clearly forgot that I'm no longer in the military, and in the civilian world, errors like this happen, and the general attitude is, well, who cares, deal with it. So we did our level best to do just that. Since we always have a backup plan, Chris saved the day for us.
So guys, tonight we're going to sit down and have a Shabbos meal, traditional Jewish meal on a Friday night. Now by rights I shouldn't be filming, but because I know you guys are going to have a memorable night, I want you guys to remember it. So I'm going to capture the moment, or try to.
That night we celebrated a traditional Jewish Sabbath meal with our hosts, the Diamond family, who had so generously given us free rein of their home to use as our base in Melbourne. For those of you who have never had a Sabbath meal in a Jewish home, I urge you to experience it to understand how amazing it is. From sunset on Friday night until sunset on Saturday night, Jewish people all over the world come together for a meal and have done so for thousands of years. As traditional songs are sung, the table is prepared with an assortment of wonderful food and wine fit for royalty, and the Diamonds made us feel exactly that. Michael Diamond, the head of the house, shared with us stories about the Sabbath and why it's so important to Jews, while Karen, his wonderful wife, did what she did best and put on a meal that we would later dream about in the days to come as we camped in the bitter winter cold around campfires. After the blessing of the wine that was handed around for all of us to take part of, the bread known as challah was blessed and cut for all of us to share. Moments later we sat and the food just kept coming and coming. Now, I had tried to warn the team to go easy on the food as so much more was coming out, that just as you thought it was over, Karen's next round of something magical to eat made its way to the table. In a Jewish home, there's no such thing as, no thanks, I couldn't fit another thing in. So, soon enough, we found ourselves struggling to keep up. What a wonderful final night to remember the Diamond family by, who will forever be part of this great adventure.
Interrupt while things were just getting comfortable, shall we say. And just on behalf of George's group of, as he calls them, Cameleers or crazy compadres, we just want to thank the Diamond family for your wonderful hospitality, which is above and beyond what we could ever hope to have got. And so we thank you immensely for all the help and assistance you've given us. You know, you've opened your arms and just let us into your home. We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Well said, mate. Well said.
Yeah, cheers. That's the kind, as we say.
You're getting embarrassed that you're sleeping on the floors. Like, I'm coping.
That night, the team, excluding Phil and myself, slept warm and cosy in the house as it was a particularly cold Melbourne night, and they had worked such long hours sorting out the final details that they needed the best sleep possible. When it was daybreak, the whole team was up and preparing the supplies for departure just a few hours away. More than a ton in parts for the bikes, including fuel, as well as food and bulk water, was loaded into the recovery vehicle along with our field supplies. Like always, we took the time to check everything so nothing was missed or left behind. Everyone was in high spirits and anticipating the moment that we'd finally climb onto our bikes and start the adventure that we had eagerly waited for so long. With adrenaline pumping and excitement, we finally turned our attention to ourselves as we put on all our riding gear and warmed up the bikes.
George, I was just wondering what the arrangement here with this water bottle. Like, this is for life-saving water, and it's held down with a bit of tie wire. And the concern, if it springs off, I'm going to run out of water.
See, Chris, because you're an amateur, you don't even understand stuff. You know what that's there for? So you can like bend it into a hook so you can catch fish out there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. I was thinking survival. See, that's the thing. You're a tech. What would you know, Dave? What would he know? He was a tech. Crying out loud. You weren't a combat soldier. You weren't a hardened combat soldier like us.
From here, we'd fill our tanks up at the local petrol station and do a test run of our communications equipment and head for the first part of our adventure that would officially mark the beginning of our journey. That's Royal Park. Navigating at night through the city of Melbourne shouldn't be taken lightly, and I was on eggshells because I knew I wasn't anywhere near the competent rider, let alone the navigator that I was expected to be as I was directing the team to Royal Park. I had set my GPS to avoid road tolls as Dave was paying $15 each and every time he'd entered a motorway, and I have no idea how much I was paying for my bikes, but I knew I'd be getting the bill. So it was a slow process of following a spaghetti network of roads and highways with Victorian drivers boxing us in and hell-bent on trying to kill us before we got out of their city. I desperately wanted to get this tense experience over and done with so we could clear the city limits and head north. At one point, the going around in circles was too much for me, and I called all the riders to just avoid Royal Park's departure that we had planned and just move on.
So here we are. Not. Unfortunately, Melbourne is such a shit place to drive in that when we selected on the GPS to avoid tolls, because we don't want to pay $15 just to see the scenic place, we are getting the scenic place all right. We're getting one hell of a tour, and I did give up actually. I said, screw this, let's just go to Lancefield. This is bullcrap.
But thankfully the team reassured me that all would be okay and just to take my time and get us there, no matter how long it took. And they were completely right. How could we depart on the Burke and Wills Adventure without leaving from the very spot that Burke and his men had departed back in 1860?
Well, here we are at Royal Park, Melbourne, and this is a very special place, and it's a special moment for us because in 1860 something fantastic happened here, and it's been such a monumental event that Australia's never forgotten it. And when I read the story of Burke and Wills, I knew that one day I had to do the Burke and Wills track. And after 2 years of planning, I've managed to pull together a team of great friends. Phil, Christopher over here, and his wife Samantha. And of course behind the camera, the amazing Dave Gay, who's learned to be a cameraman.
You see, if you wind the clock back 154 years ago, 1 month and 1 day, stood a bunch of men who had a mission, and that was to cross the continent from south to north and be the very first white man in history records to be able to do that. They did it, and they do stand in our history record books today. The leaders of the expedition, Burke and Wills, we're here at this very moment to see if we can follow their footsteps and I guess enjoy the sense of adventure and awe that they experienced along the way. Just 154 years, 5 generations ago. That's all it was. I've been told by George that a lot of the trees that surround us here were actually here at that time. So it's hard to explain the sense of awe that I'm feeling right now, unless you could be here. I guess partly because what we're doing is quite illegal as well.
Well, here we are, and enough's been said about here and why we're here. And the only thing that I've got to say from this point is our mission is going to be successful with no injuries, and we won't repeat the same mistakes that Burke and Wills did. We planned well, we've got good equipment, we've got sensible people, and we're going to have a good time and a great journey. Let's do it.
So this is it. From this point on, our Burke and Wills journey begins. We have 3,250 kilometre journey ahead of us where we will cross the interior.
With the formalities now behind us, it was time to open up on our bikes and head for the tiny settlement of Lancefield, located 90 kilometres north of Melbourne. Lancefield would be our home for tonight, as it was also home for Burke and Wills when they pitched their tents here on the night of August the 23rd, just 3 days out of Melbourne. We raced to Lancefield in less than an hour, but like Burke and his men, we'd be freezing the whole way. As we were exhausted from the day's events, we picked the first spot on the side of the road that offered us anything remotely close to a rest stop. But in the darkness, we couldn't see how much of a mistake this location would be, but we would soon find out come daybreak.
The first person to go to sleep already is Phil.
We thought that Phil was tired, as we all were, and we didn't think anything of the fact that he got off his bike, laid out his sleeping bag and crashed without so much as a word or a good night from him. We had again missed the signs that his health was failing.
Yep, there she is, Sam.
Hello.
You reckon you're going to get warm there tonight?
Oh, you bet.
Excellent. And last but not least, Christopher Sowry.
Setting up camp that night took us nearly 40 minutes, as we had no idea where items were packed, and the whole truck had to be unpacked and all our boxes had to be opened.
Dave, what if anything are your sort of possible issues with sleeping here tonight?
Well, we're actually supposed to go a bit further tonight, but well, the caravan park's probably shut, and we still didn't really know exactly how far it was. And I know we were quite tired at Sunbury,
Yeah.
so I've pulled it. That's it. We're stopping. We're camping by the road. Fatigue management. You know, we've got to get some shut eye, especially after last night's late finish with the comms debacle. I think it's important that we just stop while we can, so we don't cause an accident.
Excellent, mate.
The following morning, we woke to the sound of a speeding train racing past us a mere 70 metres from our spot. Had one of us got up in the darkness to take a leak, we might have been hit by it. Still, we woke up safe from our first day's departure, and like the explorers of 1860, we had no idea what was waiting for us today, but the promise of fun and no dramas was our goal.
I was very tired and glad to get to bed. I've woken up refreshed but a bit of a sore throat. It'll be a great day.
I'm a bit worried about this sore throat I've got, but we'll see if we can see another doctor in Bendigo.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be riding a motorbike through Melbourne at night on winter, trying to avoid tolls. It was quite something. Hey, but we did it.
Chris?
Courtesy of George's free GPS software. so many laps in Melbourne. My left calf is sore, and I was getting cramps from all the gear shifting on that bike. And the clutch is very difficult. We've gone through that in an earlier video, like the clutch cable fills your nails going up and down the cheese grater. So yeah, I was having a few difficulties. So I might need some pain-killing drugs in my left calf before the end of the trip. But yeah, things are looking good. Open roads.
10 seconds,
Longer,
he said.
not less gear shifted, we should be right.
Thank you.
We hit the road without breakfast that morning, as we planned to stop in the little town of Lancefield, just 10 kilometres north, as we wanted to look around and enjoy the beauty of country Victoria. Well, we're in the small town of Lancefield, which is roughly about, I don't know, maybe 100 k's north of Melbourne, and we have our first big problem. Samantha was riding the bike with the least mileage on the clock, and the one bike I expected to have no issues. When Chris did his morning service on all the bikes, he discovered Samantha's bike had absolutely no oil in the engine, and all fingers were pointing at me, as I was in charge of putting oil in the bikes after their filter change. But since all the bikes looked exactly the same, I must have missed topping her bike up, and now the damage could be fatal for her ride. Even with fresh oil in the engine that we carried, the bike failed to start, and pretty soon Chris found the bike was plagued with ignition issues as well.
We have this problem here. This switch is intermittent and it turns Sam's bikes off on the freeway with cars coming down behind us, so this is a bit of a priority. Luckily there's a service station just over there, and being a pretty basic switch, we actually thought it was a double pole, double throw, because I stuck my head under there, that's what it appeared to be, but I was looking at 2 switches, but we're lucky, it's a very simple switch, normal on-off toggle switch. So, George, get one please.
The adventure wasn't getting off to a great start, and the last thing I wanted was Chris to constantly be fixing these bloody bikes. I'd been warned to stay away from these Yamahas, but I naively thought that if the Australian Army used them, then they must be good. I was a fool to think these Yamahas would make the trip, and worse still, I was quickly looking like an idiot. I hadn't properly tested the bikes, but what was crushing my spirit fast was knowing that I actually hadn't tested them, and now it was starting to show. Now, I'd like to take a few moments to leave the motorbike madness and talk a little bit about Burke and his expedition. The night before, we'd stopped off at Royal Park to see the very place where the original explorers departed from on the 20th of August in 1860. Now, there is so much written about that day, and I find myself having no trouble at all imagining their departure. An estimated 40,000 people showed up to farewell Mr. Burke and his men. And if you keep in mind that Melbourne was only 16 years old at the time, it means most of the population had turned up to see them off. Camels had never been seen in Australia before, and George Landells was put in charge of bringing these giants over from the Middle East and using them for the first time ever in an expedition here in Australia. Landells was second in charge and not William Wills. Wills was one of the scientists on the expedition who also understood navigation and kept immaculate journals, and most of what we know today we owe to William Wills. Burke, on the other hand, was terrible at keeping journals and had no time for science officers on his expedition. It was well documented that Burke objected to the expectations of a scientist joining his expedition, and he deemed them and all their equipment as a complete waste of time and space. Yet it would be science and the skillful use of that equipment that would help him every step of the way. When Burke and his expedition departed Royal Park, they did so to the sound of a band playing and the crowds cheering. Basically, their departure was a little bit more popular than ours, as we had to sneak into the park by night to get our motorbikes next to the monument, which is strictly prohibited by the local council. Once Burke left Royal Park and was well on his way, all his horse-drawn carriages that were overloaded began to break down with just 10 miles behind them. The expedition stopped for so many breakdowns, it was terribly demoralising for his men. Most of the issue was mud and the carriages getting bogged down. Teams of horses would be unhitched from one carriage and then fixed to another that was stuck, only to move a mere 5 metres and it would be bogged again. It was slow, hard-going work. Back in Lancefield, the repairs on Samantha's bike was slow and hard-going work also, and things simply couldn't get any worse, or so I thought. While standing around watching Chris tinker away, I heard the sound of motorbikes rumble past, but when I saw it was just 4 guys on Vespers, I laughed, and they must have taken offence to it. They may have also taken offence to me giving them the finger, I don't know, but I know this, suddenly they turned around and headed for us.
You just saw there is the local bikie gang here, the local outlaw gang of Lancefield.
Shit, things have suddenly got worse. Mama's Awesome Foursome is an outlaw gang that runs contraband up and down the Victorian Highway, and Lancefield is one of their jurisdictions. This outlaw bikie group popped up in the 60s and were a constant problem to the Victorian government, who was slow to bring in bikie laws like those of Queensland. As the leader of their gang politely asked us in a soft voice, "Why are you here?" his sergeant-at-arms circled us, making us all very nervous. Just the intimidating sight of these four giants, who look even bigger when they're mounted on the Vespers, was enough to scare even the most hardened of us. How is it that I get myself in so much trouble with so little effort? I admit, the thought crossed my mind to jump on my bike and leave the other suckers behind with the broken bike while I hightailed it for Queensland.
Well, we're here in Lancefield and the local rebel gang has just come out here. They've just popped in to find out why we're in their turf. So after we've exchanged a few details and we paid them a few cartons in bounty, we're allowed to stay here for a few minutes just to fix up our bike, and then they told us we have to get out.
That's right. Now remember, I said 2 minutes. You've been here now 90 fucking seconds. Get on your fucking bikes and get the fuck out of there.
Thankfully, I didn't end up having to kick their asses, and Mama's awesome foursome rode off as quickly as they rode in, putting an end to things. And this is also the end of part 2 of the Burke and Wills Adventure. Thank you for watching.